During our class videos, you may hear our poets and playwrights use terms that are new to you. We have created a list of key terms and definitions that you can refer to at any point during our video lectures. This list is available on the Videos and Readings class page, where you can read it or download it as a PDF. If you would like to find and review these terms while you watch each class video, you can stop this video, go back to the Videos and Readings class page, and download the PDF. There you can play this video and each of the following class videos. If you have any questions about these terms, we encourage you to ask your teaching team in the weekly class discussions. Dana Levin is an American poet and author of In the Surgical Theater, Wedding Day, Sky Burial, and Banana Palace. She has received numerous fellowships and awards, including those from the National Endowment for the Arts, Penn, the Witter-Bitter Foundation, and the Library of Congress, as well as Whiting and Guggenheim Foundations. She has served as the Rousseau Endowed Chair in Creative Writing at the University of New Mexico, and currently co-chairs the Creative Writing and Literature Department at Santa Fe University of Art and Design.
I'm so delighted to be here today to talk to you about poetry and social issues. My name is Dana Levin, and I'm going to talk about some poems from my fourth book, Banana Palace. Just came out from Copper Canyon Press. And the social issue that I'm going to talk to you about today has to do with appetite, which at first glance may not actually seem to be a social issue at all. But in fact, if we think about what is happening with climate change and with environmental degradation in this world, appetite is everything. Now, how did I get to this notion of appetite? And here is where the craft issues around angle of approach come up in terms of how do we lodge our protest, our outrage, our concern, our worry about things that are going on in the world and still write or attempt to write resonant poetry that is working with all of the craft elements that go into creating resonant poetry. When I think about the potential pitfalls of writing what we would call political poetry or poetry that is coming out of societal difficulty, I think the pitfalls can be shrillness of tone, seeming like you're preaching, sort of banging your fist, and it can all be very outer directed. We can fall into tonalities of blame, tonalities of didacticism, and sometimes those kinds of tonalities can put a reader off, which is what we don't want to do because we want to call their attention to an issue that we feel strongly about. In my own work, as I have been feeling increasingly concerned about the state of the planet and how that's going to affect peoples and countries, I think about, this might seem odd, an alchemical motto from a medieval alchemist, and it says, "The outer sun hungers for the inner one." And the way that I interpret that motto is that the collective conditions, the exterior conditions, have a hunger for understanding their own sources. So when I apply this to issues around climate change and the environment, I end up going back to the source of the individual person and how the individual person is playing a hand consciously or unconsciously in the predicament that we find ourselves in environmentally. So as I was thinking about this and as the poems were teaching me about this, because I definitely believe that if you're writing, the act of writing is an act of listening to maybe a better angel, a muse, who is trying to offer a message through you. So as I'm listening to the poem, what I'm seeing is that the poems want to talk about appetite. And the problem with appetite is that we all have one, and we all have to eat in order to live. And so, how do we wrestle with that in terms of the damage that we're doing to the planet? For me, I then think about the adage, the personal is political. I start looking around at my own life and my own teachers of appetite. So here's a poem about my cat, my beloved cat Murray, who's taught me a lot about appetite. Murray, my. Murray, my, feed me, caterwauler. A meat sack with another meat sack for a pet, I tended hunger. His and mine, the baby moles he'd bat to death, the low-slung hunt near the sink for chicken grease. My teacher beast. He liked it raw or cooked or canned or kibbled. He'd clip a claw to my lower lip if I was asleep, so that I'd pad to the kitchen and slop his bowl with seafood medley, chicken, beef. I'd grab him up, squeeze so tight I thought I'd pop, croon, silly, 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 and watch his eyes close down to slits. I tended hunger. It was on my mind a lot as I watched the climate curl and bang. Were you watching too, wondering if you'd hesitate to eat your cat in the new extreme of flood and flame? I had a brute hypochondria about the future's body. All around me, summer burst its sack of seeds in trumpet horns of purple blue. I loved so much I cut them once to bring inside, where they promptly died. And thus I knew, no matter how much I loved the world, to hunger was to be a destroyer. Hopefully, if you are listening to that poem attentively, you can hear a lot of rhyming going on. And sometimes I think that in our wish to talk about societal issues, in a wish to give expression to our outrage, we can forget that poems truck in sound, they truck in pacing and rhythm, and that I think, and they truck in images too. So I think that successful political poems don't forget about the craft of poetry as they are trying to talk about the issues at hand. So in terms of the objective correlative, what Eliot meant when he was talking about it, and you can find it in a pretty wonky essay called Tradition and the Individual Talent, where T.S. Eliot offers up a lot of his theories about poetry and how to write it. His contention was that if you're feeling very heated about something, which is often the case when we're writing about social issues, if you attack it directly, you just may end up with a very forced poem or something that doesn't even seem like a poem and might, in our case with social issues, might seem more like a screed or a rant. And so his contention was that don't attack the issue directly. Find a correlating object that will kind of act as a symbol for all of the feelings and thoughts that you're having about a particular issue, and just write about that object. He thought that if you just focused on the object itself, that all of your feelings and concerns about an issue would inevitably come forward in the way that you describe this object, in the way that you interact with it. So in the poem Murray My, I'm really focused on my cat. I'm focused on his eating habits, the fact that he'll wake me up out of sleep by, taking a claw and going like this to wake me up, feed me. And he becomes the correlating object for the way in which that poem wants to look at appetite. I can direct you to a wonderful poem by Seamus Heaney called Helmet, which is a wonderful poem about 9/11. But what he focuses on is a fireman's helmet that a downtown New York City fire brigade gave him years before 9/11. And the occasion of 9/11 makes him go back and look at that helmet and meditate on the receiving of that helmet, what the helmet looks like, and very slowly The poem then just makes a little mention of the towers falling, and it's incredibly poignant. It's incredibly beautiful. But he's using one of the central tricks of poetry, which is T.S. Eliot's idea of the objective correlative. The next poem I'm going to read is called The Living Teaching. And this poem stems from a Tibetan Buddhist meditation practice where you build a refuge field, which is basically a spiritual family tree. You envision this tree, you populate it with all of your teachers and their lineages, and it's a way of feeling supported as you go through the inner work of Buddhist visualization. The way this meditation begins is you're supposed to imagine a clear blue sky, and then your primary mentor should arise. It could be a person living or dead, it could be an animal, it could be a landscape, it could be a thing. And when I first was trying out this visualization, the primary mentor that kept coming to mind was my own father, which was really shocking to me. And I just started to think, well, what did my father teach me? And he was a untreated manic depressive. He was wonderful and terrifying. He was a rager, and he was an eater. He loved eating. And he taught me to take a lot of pleasure in eating. It was one of the few things we could do together where it was like, I'm hanging out with Dad, and this is really fun. So I started to think about being a student of eating. And, you know, based on what I just said earlier, this then leads to thinking about how we learn about appetite and restraint. My father didn't have a lot of restraint around eating. He was a person of excess. And dealing with my own personal excess has been something I've been dealing with my whole life. But I think that if you go back to this idea of the outer sun hungering for the inner one, the only way out of our predicament is having to look at our own hungers. So again, this is about the angle of approach. How do I write an authentic poem that expresses my concerns? And for me, it's all about trying to find the source, which will be inside myself. So, the living teaching, the you in this poem is the Father. And you'll hear a kind of drum beat to it, which is where I think the intensity of inquiry comes forward. You wanted to be a butcher, but they made you be a lawyer. You brought home presents when it was nobody's birthday. Smashed platters of meat she cut against the grain were a kind of portable shrine. I was supposed to cultivate a field of bliss, then return to my ordinary mind. You burned the files and moved the office, made your children fear a different school, liked your butter hard and your candy frozen, were a kind of diamond drill drilling a hole right through my skull, quality sleep, late November. What did it mean, field of bliss? A sky alive with your greatest mentor. I wore your shoes big as boats flopped through the house, while you made garlic eggs with garlic salt. What represents the living teaching? Sausages on toasted rye with a pickle and a smother of cheese and frosting right out of the can without the cake. You ruled with a knife in one hand and a fork in the other. You raged at my stony mother while I banged from my high chair, waving a bloodied bone of something slaughtered. I was a butcher's daughter. So all hail to me, os gurgies, vortex mouth. I gap my craw and the bakeries of the cities fall. I stomp the docks, spew out a bullet stream of oyster shells. I'll drain the seas, the silos on every farm, the rice from the paddy fields, the fruit from all the orchard trees, and then I'll eat the trees. I'll eat with money and I'll eat with my teeth until the rocks and the mountains curl and my blood sings. I'm such a good girl to eat the world. So the poem is a kind of self-indictment, but it also takes to an exaggerated level what I learned about eating from my mentor father. And the idea of that personal restraint, the lack of personal restraint, can have massive collective ramifications. And sometimes when we're thinking about social issues, they feel so huge, it's hard to understand how a single person can do anything about them, or how a poem can do anything about them. And to me, the angle of approach of thinking about the personal complicity in a system is one way of feeling like, okay, if I really want to address and call attention to the ways in which appetite is damaging the planet, I have to look at the ways in which appetite has affected me and the ways my appetite affect others. And here too, a kind of objective correlative becomes this idea of the mentor and the father mentor. And then allowing myself to transform into this monstrous, gigantic creature that's eating the world. In terms of exaggeration as a craft approach to writing about social issues, it can be the exaggeration of an image, it can be an exaggeration of a voice. So in terms of exaggeration of image, at the end of the living teaching, I just see that the speaker of the poem just almost becomes this baby tyrant, just almost like a giant baby stomping around the world, just eating everything in sight, and calling myself, or the speaker self, because they're pretty close in this poem, that's not always the case, vortex mouth, to give yourself a name, to enlarge this part of yourself that is appetite. And then the intensity of spew out a bullet stream of oyster shells. It's almost cartoon-like in terms of, you can imagine like a Looney Tunes cartoon of a figure just going and this idea of just eating the fruit from the orchard trees and then eating the trees themselves. So it's an exaggeration of the drive of appetite. It's just one method for calling a reader or a listener's attention to what's happening. In terms of exaggeration of tone, it walks hand in hand with the exaggeration of image at the end of this poem. Obviously, this is just my way of trying to avoid those pitfalls of screed and rant and preaching and didacticism. And it also is an outgrowth of my own personal philosophy that I have to go into my own internal source in order to understand how I am participating consciously or unconsciously. I think it's really easy, especially when the exterior world and the polis, the city, the country, the nation, is facing so many dire issues. It's really easy to think that somehow writing poems from the interior self is a misdirection or frivolity. I don't believe this, because I don't believe that collective difficulties arise unless many, many individuals are having a hand in creating them. So the last thing that I would hope to say to all of you is don't ignore your interior self in your wish to speak about collective issues. But at the same time, in terms of writing about social issues, the real question is, how does exploring my interior self help illuminate these issues? Because the interior self may or may not. And we have certainly read many poems that want to cry out about social issues that just sort of seem to be all about me. You know what I mean? So you do have to consider how the interior self is participating in and reacting to those collective forces. But I just wanted to say, it's okay to go inward.